Welcome to Eka Software, where we uncover the authentic stories of endurance, valor, and strategic pivots that shaped history. It's August 1942. Barely 2 months have passed since the stunning American victory at Midway. The tide has turned, but the war in the Pacific is far from over. Now, the United States is about to launch its first major offensive, a bold gamble codenamed Operation Watchtower. The target is a rugged, malaria-infested island in the Solomon Chain, 1,000 miles northeast of Australia, Guadalcanal. Why this remote island? Japan had seized it just a month earlier, in July, and was rapidly building an airfield. From this strategic position, Japanese bombers could threaten the vital supply lines connecting the United States with Australia and New Zealand, potentially isolating the continent and strangling the Allied war effort in the South Pacific. American intelligence quickly spotted the construction on Guadalcanal and the nearby island of Tulagi. The alarm bells rang all the way to Washington. The fiercely aggressive Admiral Ernest J. King, Chief of Naval Operations, pushed for an immediate invasion. Admiral Chester Nimitz, commander of the Pacific Fleet, assigned Vice Admiral Robert L. Gormley to lead the overall operation. Under him, Rear Admiral Richmond K. Turner would command the amphibious forces, while the legendary 1st Marine Division, 19,000 strong and led by Major General Alexander A. Vandegrift, would spearhead the assault. On the Japanese side, General Harukichi Hyakutake's 17th Army and Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto's powerful combined fleet were confident. They critically underestimated the scale and determination of the American response. What followed was a brutal, 6-month campaign of attrition, from August 7, 1942, to February 9, 1943. This wasn't just a battle. It was a grueling test of will that marked the definitive shift for the Allies from a defensive posture to a relentless offensive drive across the Pacific. D-Day in the Pacific was August 7, 1942. Admiral Turner's massive fleet of 75 ships, screened by the aircraft carriers Saratoga, Enterprise, and Wasp under Rear Admiral Frank Jack Fletcher, began a thunderous bombardment of Guadalcanal and Tulagi. At 9:10 in the morning, 11,000 Marines stormed ashore on Guadalcanal's Red Beach. They met no opposition. The Japanese construction troops, completely surprised, had fled into the dense jungle. By the afternoon, the Marines had captured their primary objective, the nearly completed airfield. They quickly renamed it Henderson Field, in honor of Major Lofton Henderson, a Marine aviator killed at the Battle of Midway. The landings on the smaller islands of Tulagi and Gavu to Tanambogo were a different story. Here, the 1,500 Japanese defenders fought with fanatical determination, battling to the death. It took 2 days of savage fighting to secure them, costing 144 American lives. The initial phase seemed like a stunning success. By August 8th, Tulagi was secure, and by August 20th, Henderson Field was operational. The first planes of Marine Air Group 23, soon to be nicknamed the Cactus Air Force, arrived, bringing F-4F Wildcats and SBD Dauntless dive bombers. But the situation was about to turn desperate. Fearing a powerful Japanese naval counterattack, Admiral Fletcher, whose carriers provided the fleet's vital air cover, controversially decided to withdraw his forces. This left the amphibious ships dangerously exposed. On August 9th, Admiral Turner had no choice but to pull out his transports as well, leaving the Marines on Guadalcanal with only a few days' worth of rations and a fraction of their heavy equipment. They were isolated. Japan's reaction was swift and deadly. On the night of August 8th, a force of Japanese cruisers commanded by Admiral Gunichi Mikawa steamed down the slot, the channel running through the Solomon Islands. In the ensuing Battle of Savo Island, Mikawa's force delivered one of the most crushing defeats in U.S. naval history, sinking for Allied heavy cruisers the American Astoria, Quincy, and Vincennes, and the Australian Canberra. Over 1,000 Allied sailors were killed. In a critical error, however, Mikawa chose to retreat without attacking the vulnerable American transports, a missed opportunity that might have doomed the entire invasion. For the Marines on Guadalcanal, hell had just begun. The island was a nightmare of dense jungle, suffocating heat often exceeding 100 degrees, torrential rains that turned the ground into a sea of mud, and swarms of insects carrying malaria and dysentery. With supplies of quinine desperately short, disease became as great an enemy as the Japanese. The Marines dug in, creating a defensive perimeter around Henderson Field. The Japanese began to funnel reinforcements to the island using what the Americans called the Tokyo Express. High-speed destroyer runs down the slot at night led by the brilliant Rear Admiral Tanaka, delivering fresh troops from their main base at Rabaul. The first major ground clash came on August 21st at Alligator Creek, often mistakenly called the Battle of the Tanaru. Colonel Kiyonao Ichiki's detachment of 917 elite soldiers launched a frontal assault on the Marine lines. They were met with a wall of machine gun and artillery fire. The result was a slaughter. 777 Japanese soldiers were killed, while the Marines suffered minimal losses. A disgraced Colonel Ichiki committed ritual suicide. September brought even more ferocious fighting. On the night of September 12th, Major General Hyakutake Kawaguchi hurled 2,500 men against a crucial ridge defending Henderson Field. The position was held by just 800 Marines from Colonel Merritt A. Edson's 1st Raider and Parachute battalions. For 2 nights, the fighting was desperate and often hand-to-hand. In what became known as the Battle of Bloody Ridge, Edson's men refused to break. They held the line. The Japanese lost 1,200 men. For his incredible leadership, Edson, nicknamed Red Mike, would receive the Medal of Honor. The brutal attritional warfare continued into October along the Matanikau River, west of the Marine perimeter. Here, another Marine legend was forged. Lieutenant Colonel Louis B. Chesty Puller and his battalion were repeatedly in the thick of the action. During the Second Battle of the Matanikau, Puller's men expertly turned the tables on a Japanese ambush, inflicting some 700 casualties. Puller's courage and grit would eventually earn him an astonishing 5 Navy Crosses, making him the most decorated Marine in history. The naval war also escalated. On the night of October 11th, an American cruiser force under Rear Admiral Norman Scott, using new radar technology, ambushed a Japanese force near Cape Esperance. It was the first American surface victory in a night battle against the Imperial Japanese Navy, but the climax of the campaign was yet to come. In mid-November, Admiral Yamamoto committed his heavy hitters, sending to battleships Hiei and Kirishima to obliterate Henderson Field once and for all. This set the stage for the Naval Battle of Guadalcanal, a chaotic and brutal 3-day struggle that would decide the fate of the island. On the night of November 12th, a small American force of cruisers and destroyers under Rear Admiral Daniel J. Callaghan courageously sailed directly into the path of the Japanese bombardment group. The resulting fight was a confused, point-blank melee in the dark. Callaghan was killed on the bridge of his flagship, but his sacrifice paid off. The battleship Hiei was so badly damaged that she was scuttled the next day. The cost was enormous, including the loss of the cruiser Juno, which was torpedoed by a submarine while withdrawing, taking with her 683 men, including the 5 Sullivan brothers. 2 nights later, the Japanese returned with the battleship Kirishima. But this time, Admiral William Buell Halsey, who had replaced Gormley as the overall commander, sent his own battleships, Washington and South Dakota, under the command of Rear Admiral Willis A. Lee. In a masterful display of radar-directed gunnery, the Washington found Kirishima in the dark and pounded her into a wreck. The Japanese finally abandoned their attempts to bombard Henderson Field. The Tokyo Express continued to run, but with American air and naval superiority growing, the Japanese troops on the island were slowly being starved into submission. Guadalcanal became known to them as Starvation Island. By December, the U.S. Army's American Division began arriving to relieve the exhausted 1st Marine Division. General Vandegrift, before leaving, said, "God favors the bold and strong of heart." The final push began in January 1943. American forces launched a major offensive to clear the last pockets of Japanese resistance. Faced with an untenable situation, the Japanese High Command made a secret decision to evacuate. In Operation Ka, between February 1st and 7th, Admiral Tanaka's destroyers brilliantly and stealthily extracted over 10,000 emaciated survivors from the island, right under the noses of the Americans. The Guadalcanal campaign was over. The cost was staggering. The United States lost 7,100 men, 29 ships, and 615 aircraft. Japan's losses were catastrophic, an estimated 31,000 dead, including thousands from starvation and disease, along with 38 ships and nearly 900 aircraft. Critically, Japan lost hundreds of its best-trained, irreplaceable pilots. The campaign exhausted Japan's offensive capability in the south. They would never again threaten Australia. The echoes of Guadalcanal resonate to this day. It was a story of heroes like Chesty Puller, Red Mike Edson, and Gunnery Sergeant John Bosellone, who earned the Medal of Honor for manning his machine guns against overwhelming odds. The ordeal was immortalized by war correspondent Richard Tregoskis in his Guadalcanal diary. Guadalcanal was America's crucible in the Pacific. It was a turning point won, not by a single, brilliant maneuver, but by sheer, bloody-minded endurance. From this hard-won victory, the Allies gained the strategic initiative that would propel them on the long, island-hopping road to Tokyo. Thank you for joining us on Echo Software. If you found this story compelling, please like, share, and subscribe for more. Next time, we journey to the Eastern Front to explore the epic siege of Stalingrad. Let us know in the comments which World War II battle you'd like to see covered next. Thanks for watching.